So in the latest AMA, Darth Vega asked a question that's gonna take a while to unpack, and I thought that it deserved its own video. He asked, back when Piers Morgan was on his anti-gun crusade 10 years ago, he said many times that the UK gun death rate was around 35 people a year. Is this true? Also, I've heard that the UK gun death rate was just as low years before the ban was in place. Am I right in making that assumption? Thanks. And as I said in the AMA video, this has been really hard to find statistics on lately. Whereas gun deaths used to be published and easily accessible, the British government now seems to have made it accessible via a ton of confusing links to follow with data scattered all over the place. The closest I've been able to find is the homicide rate, which we can use to compare to changes in Britain's gun policy. Even then, I was just able to find a direct link to data from 1898 to 2002. There are other places where you can get the data since then, but you have to be careful when you mix sources together, considering there are different ways to measure this sort of thing. So, here's the homicide rate. Since we're primarily concerned with changes, I made it a log scale, and I also put in a polynomial trend line to make the changes more evident, since the figures tend to be all over the place. But basically, you have a fairly constant and perhaps even decreasing rate until 1920 or so, with a peak at 1945, going back down around 1960 and increasing since then. So basically, in 1900 in the UK, anyone who wanted could own a firearm. This is that initial part where it's constant or even decreasing. Then, in 1919, they passed the first gun control measure of any note. British subjects could only buy a firearm if they could show, quote, a good reason for having one. This is also when they implemented firearm certificates. It went into effect the next year, and this was the end of private firearm ownership. The next one comes in 1936, when they banned short-barreled shotguns, including shot pistols, as well as fully automatic firearms. Not because there was anyone misusing them, but because the government declared by fiat that there was, quote, no legitimate reason for owning them. Even though both short-barreled shotguns and shot pistols make excellent guns for pest control. This was so devastating to gun ownership in the UK that at the start of World War II, Britain had to ask American citizens to send them every kind of rifle and handgun they could so that the British could have some way of defending their homes, which was done. After the war, the British government seized them and dumped them into the sea. But we should really consider the period of World War II to be anomalous. In 1946, self-defense was no longer considered a good reason for owning a firearm, but the period after that is probably a regression to the mean. In 1953, carrying any kind of weapon for self-defense was made illegal, and then in 1967, the government restricted shotguns. They did this in response to a mass shooting that was committed with a handgun. A guy using a handgun was a reason to ban shotguns. I swear it's getting harder and harder not to be completely black-pilled. At any rate, no one could deny that, after this point, you have a constant increase in homicides, unprecedented even during World War II. In 1982, police inspections of muzzle loaders and hand loaders was required, meaning that police could demand entry into any home at any time without a warrant. 1988 was the year all semi-automatic rifles were banned, as well as pump-action rifles. Since all guns were registered, police went around and seized them. At least all the ones that were legally held, all the ones they knew about. Funny, criminals generally don't register their firearms. And in 1996, all handguns were banned, as well as all knives with a blade longer than 3 inches. These data only go to 2002, so later ones aren't ones we can examine at the moment, but there have been several, including a ban on all toy guns. Every gun control act since and including 1953 was made ostensibly to control crime. Does this look like it got crime under control to you? Now, if you're really wanting to support these insane gun laws, you could say there's some other reason for the trend looking the way it does, but at the very least, you can't show anything supporting that any of these gun restrictions stopped homicides. And remember, as the side wanting to use force, the burden of proof is on you. Now, you could say that this is just the homicide rate, and the reason for the gun bans was to stop all violent crime. Okay, here you go. Here's the violent crime rate, again with a log scale, although here I didn't really see the need to put in a trend line since the trend is pretty obvious. I'm not really sure what happened at the end there, if something really major happened or if there was a change in the way they counted violent crimes, but overall, there isn't much doubt about what happened. Let's put in the markers for the same years we saw before. And the data tell pretty much the same story. Even if you're not going to attribute the increase in crime to gun policy itself, at the very least, it failed to do what they said it would do. The very excuse given to pass these laws. Control crime. And this is what we keep seeing over and over and over again. Gun control either has no effect on crime or it makes things worse. There hasn't been one single time where it's been shown to have worked. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. You can donate with PayPal or crypto or subscribe at Patreon or Subscribestar to get all my content early and ad-free, plus other benefits like special Discord access, monthly AMAs, and shoutouts. Thanks to all my supporters, thanks to Darth Vega for asking this question, and thank you for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.